That goes to show you how the legacy of love will overpower everything.
Wow.
You know,
What did
it
you
really
learn?
expanded my concept of directing. It just opened my mind to the possibility of creativity.
Have you ever wondered how someone can go from being a beloved celebrity to one of the most polarizing figures in Hollywood practically overnight? That's exactly what happened with Jada Pinkett Smith. Once admired for her fearless attitude and creative range, she now finds herself in the center of heated debates over everything from her role in the notorious Oscar slap to her outspoken stance on what she calls a fight for equality. The same spark that once drew fans to her now seems to spark controversy at every turn. And the question everyone's asking is, has she crossed a line, or is she just a victim of a harsh entertainment industry? It's a question that's tangled up in shocking revelations, legal tangles, and a transformation that's left both Hollywood insiders and the public completely stunned. Not long ago, Jada Pinkett Smith was on a respectable trajectory. She had a variety of acting credits in both film and television, not to mention a popular talk show that brought plenty of viewers who admired her frankness. But everything changed in that split second at the Oscars, the infamous slap that instantly became international news. While it was Will Smith who delivered the blow, many critics claimed it was Jada's reactions, her past statements, and her rumored influence on her husband's decisions that made the entire debacle feel more complicated than just a moment of lost composure. Even more intriguing were the stories circulating behind the scenes. Industry insiders whispered about how Jada might have manipulated or at least heavily nudged Will into certain frames of mind, shining a new light on her involvement in his meltdown. From that point forward, Jada was no longer just an outspoken actress. She was a focal point for the public's frustration.
If it helped me understand myself as much as it helped me understand my mother, and then that helped me understand a lot of how her journey has imprinted upon me in a certain manner, you know. So I guess it does. If you, through my mother and her journey, it helped me understand her journey, which has affected me. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I guess you could say that it helped me understand myself more.
Yet, the aftershocks of that night didn't stop with the Oscars fiasco. Jada seemed to double down on her penchant for stirring the pot, especially once she started promoting her new book. She made the rounds on talk shows, podcasts, and online interviews, delving into topics ranging from her marriage to Hollywood's cultural shift, all with an unmistakable undercurrent of self-righteousness. At least that's how her critics describe it. What caused even more uproar was the hint that she might have multiple books coming, each potentially more incendiary than the last. People began to wonder, was she just fueling the drama for publicity? Or was she genuinely on some moral crusade that demanded she speak out no matter the consequences? Whichever angle you took, her words struck a nerve. Some hailed her for being brave enough to say what others in the industry only whispered about. Others said she was throwing her marriage and her career under the bus for short-term attention. That leads us to Hollywood's current perspective, which grows dimmer by the day. Although there was a time when Jada Pinkett Smith's name attached to a project might have boosted interest, the tide has clearly turned. Rumor has it that production companies have been reluctant to hire her. Whispers claim she auditioned for narrating gigs with networks like Disney's National Geographic division, but never heard back because her public image had become too volatile. A few studios, once eager to sign her for voiceover roles, apparently pivoted to safer choices who wouldn't stir up controversies or overshadow the content. Part of this change, insiders say, hinges on the overwhelming backlash she received online. People loudly questioning her sincerity, her commitment to causes, and even her understanding of the issues she claims to champion.
I think just not being ready yet. Still trying to figure out between the two of us how to be in partnership, right? And in regards to how do we present that to people, you know? And we hadn't figured that out.
It's one thing to be outspoken. It's another to isolate yourself in such a way that nobody wants the headache of defending your reputation. Still, you might think, isn't Jada Pinkett Smith just another Hollywood figure speaking her mind? After all, aren't celebrities entitled to their opinions, activism, and personal beliefs? Absolutely, but Jada's declarations became especially incendiary when she started weighing in on the state of the country after what she described as a cultural shift. She pointed to certain men in positions of leadership, both political and cultural, and labeled them as unworthy, misogynistic, or simply clueless. She insisted that society's acceptance of these figures showed how and well, to which many people asked, is Jada implying that everyone who disagrees with her is a... That's when the conversation started turning hostile. She highlighted her own marriage as a symbol of a strong union and criticized those who supported what she deemed horrible tastes. In her eyes, the public was failing to see how easily they were drawn to false leaders, and she felt it was her moral obligation to speak out, even if it meant polarizing viewers and readers. The furor skyrocketed when Jada declared that celebrities in Hollywood were being unfairly pegged as activists just because they had a platform. She admitted that while she considered herself an activist, she resented the assumption that every actor or actress automatically takes on that role. Some found this refreshing, but others felt it was another instance of Jada wanting to have it both ways, criticizing society for not listening to her activism, then criticizing them again for assuming she was, indeed, an activist.
It's the little awakenings that I get about love and just my willingness to have it, really wanting to understand what love is all about. But I do have to give my grandmother a lot of credit.
Yeah, I was going to talk about it.
Yeah, Marion really... I had all these different seeds that were planted in me. And Marion's seed, that goes to show you how the legacy of love will overpower everything.
The irony was lost on no one. Her remarks came across as contradictory, especially as she strongly condemned leaders in Washington and insisted that everyone should stand up for diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI. People scratched their heads asking, aren't those the exact values that an activist would champion? The confusion only heightened when she tied DEI to common sense, apparently ignoring critics who said this concept, as enforced in many studios, was leading to diminished creativity and divisive policies. Some of Jada's harshest pushback began when she singled out high-profile individuals like Elon Musk, who had openly criticized the effectiveness of certain DEI initiatives. Musk argued that many diversity programs in Hollywood and tech were formulaic, forced, and detracted from talent-based hiring. Jada, on the other hand, believed that those resisting these practices were blinded by privilege or ignorance, which she called foolish and clownish. That stance brought a wave of condemnation, with some claiming she was oversimplifying the debate. Her supporters, though, championed her for taking such a strong stand, pointing out that it was about time someone in Hollywood with real clout refused to budge on issues of representation. This tension ballooned into a broader cultural argument over the role of activism in entertainment. As Jada grew louder in her criticisms, prominent figures like Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar, known for their own vocal stances, chimed in with support. But not everyone was on Jada's side. Actors like James Woods, Rob Schneider, and Zachary Levi took a more skeptical view, forming a split in the industry that was now inescapable. While some longtime fans might not mind that Jada is stepping on toes, the truth is that few industries have less tolerance for ongoing controversy than Hollywood. Studios, especially in the post-pandemic era, are extremely risk-averse, aiming to produce content that appeals to the widest possible audience.
Child state of mind, right? That inner child state of mind that is still looking for that parental idea of safety. And once you become an adult, that's on us. Yeah, so that was part of the journey for me.
Box office returns are more precarious than ever, and streaming services are locked in fierce battles for subscribers. In this environment, hiring an actor who could bring a wave of negative press is a considerable gamble. That's why many insiders believe Jada Pinkett Smith has been quietly sidelined or blacklisted, not in the official sense, but in the unwritten ways the entertainment industry ostracizes individuals considered too divisive. Narration projects, cameo offers, or even reality show invitations. Many of these have dried up, leaving Jada at a crossroads. Some wonder if she'll attempt a major redemption arc, possibly by toning down her rhetoric or seeking a more diplomatic route, while others believe she's simply too entrenched in her convictions to reverse course now. Interestingly, the conversation about DEI might seem like a niche concern limited to corporate handbooks, but in entertainment, it has become a hot-button issue. For decades, Hollywood has been criticized for its lack of diversity in casting, production teams, and storyline perspectives. DEI initiatives were supposed to fix that, but critics argue these measures sometimes turn into a rigid quota system that stifles organic storytelling. Jada, however, is unwavering in her support for DEI, equating it with basic fairness. She sees it as an essential step forward for people of color and women, especially in an industry historically dominated by a narrow demographic. Yet the pushback comes from people who say modern audiences can sense when something is forced, and they resent it. They point to box office flops and negative fan reactions to show how shoehorned representation can backfire. In their eyes, Jada is out of touch, speaking from a position where her personal brand overshadows any nuanced discussion of the topic.
It was like it was so many of us with so much talent that Hollywood was now ready to give opportunity to. You had Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, you had Martin, you had Keenan Ivory Wayans with In Living Color. It was like Hollywood was ready to give us opportunity to express our creativity. And we took it by the horn.
And that, more than anything else, has put her on a collision course with large segments of the public. Some of the most intense criticism aimed at Jada is that she's become so wrapped up in her own public persona that she's no longer aware of how she comes across to everyday viewers. Skeptics say that her interviews feel more like lectures than conversations, that she dismisses opposing viewpoints without genuinely engaging them. Even her mention of how she's frightened for what we are about to face for the next 4 years has struck people as melodramatic, feeding the narrative that she's out to demonize a particular segment of Americans instead of understanding where they're coming from. Political activism is one thing, but painting an entire country or half a voting population with one broad stroke is, by any measure, a fast way to alienate fans. As these accusations pile up, the real question becomes, can she pivot her approach? In a constantly evolving social climate, fans can be forgiving if a celebrity demonstrates sincerity in learning or transforming. But so far, Jada seems determined to remain steadfast, doubling down whenever criticized. If there's one mystery that lingers, it's the future of her career and how she'll navigate it. Though insiders claim she's not the first star to face intense backlash, she's certainly among the few who continue to publicly antagonize powerful decision-makers. Some believe she's already working behind the scenes on new deals, possibly with platforms that emphasize documentary-style, real conversation content. Others think she'll ramp up the publication route, turning to additional books or written commentaries, hoping a more controlled medium will let her shape public perception. There are even rumors, though unconfirmed, of a potential joint endeavor with Will Smith, meant to show their united front and put to rest any speculation that their marriage is in shambles. The biggest question remains, is Hollywood really done with Jada, or will a fresh wave of controversy ironically lead to a bigger spotlight? After all, in show business, there's a tricky balance between bad publicity and irreversible damage, and sometimes that line is razor thin. At this juncture, many viewers and fans are torn. On one hand, there's a sense that Jada is echoing deeper frustrations that many women and minorities in Hollywood have voiced for decades, but never had the platform or the nerve to express so brazenly. Could it be that she's simply exposing the ugly underbelly of an industry that tolerates activism until it stops being profitable? On the other hand, people see her as reckless, pushing a narrative that lumps all dissenters into categories of racist or ignorant. This black and white perspective, critics argue, doesn't allow for the nuance that such complex social issues require. By painting entire groups in broad strokes, Jada might be alienating potential allies who support some form of social progress, but balk at the approach being used. It's an important distinction. Activism that fosters understanding tends to win hearts. Activism that comes off as scolding or self-righteous typically drives people away. Ultimately, the story of Jada Pinkett Smith serves as a broader cautionary tale about the intersection of celebrity, politics, and personal conviction. In an age of social media, viral sound bites, and 24/7 news cycles, every comment can be amplified beyond recognition. A single sentence taken out of context, or even in context, can define someone's entire public image, overshadowing their body of work or prior accomplishments.
Wow. It really expanded my concept of directing. It just opened my mind to the possibility of creativity, like to break the mold.
You're such a heartbeat of that movie. You also play a young mother.
Yeah, I definitely had a lot to pull from, and it felt really good to be able to show a young Black woman in that way.
While Jada undoubtedly has defenders who believe she's speaking for marginalized voices, she also has an expanding group of detractors who view her as exemplifying everything that's gone wrong with Hollywood's preachy activism. Whether you champion her or chastise her, it's clear she's not fading quietly into the background. And maybe that's part of the puzzle. Jada has always thrived on open dialogue, even when that dialogue was about her controversies. The real cliffhanger is whether she can bridge the gap between personal belief and public perception. If Hollywood shuts its doors on her entirely, Jada might find another route. Perhaps through indie projects or her own production ventures. She might also leverage her existing fan base to launch new media platforms focusing on societal issues, effectively bypassing the studios that won't take a chance on her anymore. Or, in the most surprising twist of all, she might emerge with a tempered approach that invites conversation rather than confrontation. Imagine if she found a way to lead critical discussions without antagonizing half her audience. Could that be the path to redemption? Or is she already too far down the rabbit hole? By now, it's clear that Jada Pinkett Smith's journey isn't just about a single night at the Oscars or one controversial interview. It's a series of dominoes. The slap triggered deeper speculation about her marriage and her influence on Will Smith. The backlash propelled her to speak even more freely about and leadership in America, and these comments fueled debates over DEI, activism in Hollywood, and the fine line between fearless honesty and destructive rhetoric. Each step seems to bring a new wave of headlines, and each time the stakes get higher. In a business where today's drama is often tomorrow's forgotten footnote, Jada's saga stands out for its sheer persistence. Love her or hate her, you can't deny that she has a remarkable ability to keep people talking. So the final question for all of us is whether Jada Pinkett Smith's crusade against what she calls false leaders and unworthy men in our culture will eventually win her admiration or seal her fate as an outcast. Will her unfiltered style spark a long overdue conversation in Hollywood about genuine inclusivity and hypocrisy and activism? Or will it simply push more people away? One thing is certain, Jada's not the type to go quietly, and her battle lines are firmly drawn. She's daring the world to confront its own biases while simultaneously demanding we respect her views, even as she refuses to compromise. It's a bold stance, one that may either galvanize a new generation of fans or turn off those who see her as part of the problem. As she stands at this crossroads, we're left asking ourselves whether Jada Pinkett Smith is forging a new path of speaking truth to power, or forging her own downfall. Wherever you land on that debate, it's a question with enough twists and turns to keep the world's eyes fixed on her next move. And that might just be the most surprising outcome of all. In trying to champion her version of the truth, Jada has become inescapably relevant, whether the rest of Hollywood likes it or not. And thank you for watching and thinking through this complicated story. Whether you believe Jada's stance is heroic or damaging, it's clear she's transforming the conversation around celebrity activism and DEI. The real mystery is how she'll navigate an industry that seems to be tiptoeing away from her. Could her unwavering convictions eventually reshape Hollywood's policies? Or will they leave her standing alone on the outside? Sometimes the hardest truths lead to the biggest breakthroughs, and sometimes they just make people shut the door. The next chapters in her story will undoubtedly be anything but quiet, and it's only a matter of time before we see if her gamble on unwavering honesty pays off. Until then, it's a cliffhanger worthy of a Hollywood screenplay, minus the bland director's cut instructions, because real-life drama has no script.